how many? Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the BC Village's inaugural #1, very first open chat. This is our open meeting, and so happy for all of you who have come and joined us. I am here with the BC Village's president, Sophia Tessitore,
Yes.
and the fabulous, amazing Taj Donville Otterbridge. Thank you so much for coming here and being with us.
Of course.
So, just before we start, this is just like how we have our regular meetings. We need to have some agreements first. So, what we agreed to do, and if you don't mind, I am going to read it out to you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kenita Perry, and I'm the facilitator and creator of the BC Village. What we agreed to today, for any of you who are online, who's going to be corresponding with us, having your comments, what we agree is what is said in the cafe stays in the cafe, and what is learned here is shared widely. So remember that. When sharing, please do not use names or identifiers. Maybe I'm talking for those who are in the room, but even when you're typing, don't use anyone's names if you know of any examples. People should be here to speak for themselves. Value the lived experience of others, and so speak from your own experience using I statements. Okay, very important one. We will respect each other and our opinions. We may not agree, so we will agree to disagree if necessary. Okay, and also just assume good intent and take responsibility for your impact. So with that, I'm going to be sharing some more information about our events later, but I'm going to actually put it over to our president, who's going to be facilitating this conversation. So, Sophia, take it away.
Okay. Hi, Todd. Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to start off with some questions for you. First off, of course, how did you get involved with the village? What was that process like for you? And what would you say is like, your biggest achievements within the village, and how has it shaped your activism going forward?
How did I get involved in the village? Okay, that's an interesting one. So I had heard about this village going on. KP was organizing. It was smaller meetings there, yes. And I was like, at first I was a little bit like, I don't know if it's for me and all of that. And then I was like, okay, well, let me give it a shot. So eventually I ended up giving it a shot, and it was really nice. And I think the first time I went, we watched RuPaul's Drag Race, if I'm not mistaken. So I love that. And so that's how I really got introduced into the village. It was really just a safe space for LGBT+ students at Marina College and allies as well. I think it was mostly allies at that time, actually. And just to have a good time and to talk about common interests and our issues, I suppose. Biggest accomplishment from that time for me, I think, would be both the creation of our little booklet that we had made for professionals based on our experience, kind of giving some definitions of some identities, as well as some things, some advice, offering things not to say and what to say instead, based on everyone in the village's experience with these terms, and debunking some myths as well.
Yeah.
And then having our educational community outreach event that we had in front of the Counseling and Careers Center. That was really amazing, and we got to talk to all different people across the campus, and I think a lot of people learned stuff from that. So I really enjoyed that. That was, I think, the biggest accomplishment for me.
I love that. Awesome. Yeah. And so, the village, how long were you part of it? I mean, I know you're still a part now, but like, was it all throughout your college career? Like while you were at the college?
No, so I was a dual enrollment student. So I started at the college in 2015. Yeah, late 2015.
Yes.
And the village didn't exist then. So I didn't get involved until my last year, or second last year at Marina College. So I think I've been involved, if you count all the way up to now, that would be like 5 years now.
Wow. 5 years, it feels like 15.
Yeah.
And it's just because of what was accomplished.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how do you say, that has, informed your activism, because now you're involved with a lot of different groups, like Bermuda?
Yeah. So I'm always telling KP that I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for KP. I always tell her that. She always knows that. And she always knows that I have time to come back to the village because it's what, I guess, gave me the confidence to speak on these issues and to have the support and know that there are other people that are willing to support LGBTQ plus people in Bermuda. Because based on my experience, I had always, while I was out and still the same Taj, I didn't necessarily get involved in activism because I didn't think there was a lot of support for it. Or in my experience in public school, there wasn't a lot of support from the staff and other students. So getting that boost and understanding that you're being supported and that you have this space and that someone's giving you this opportunity and they don't really have to, was really great and really foundational, I think, to me being so out there.
I love that. Yeah. I totally relate to that, public school and how they very much sort of, I would say, they definitely see it as like more of a taboo topic. Exactly. There's no like LGBTQ groups in public schools, as far as I'm aware. Like when I was at Berkeley, I graduated in 2019. Even back then, there's no support. You know what I mean? So it's great that we have the space here. Yeah. And so you did mention earlier that when the village first started, it was mostly allies. And do you find that to be sort of in general with the LGBTQ advocacy scene here, like in Bermuda, not even just in the village, but across the islands?
No, I wouldn't say in the advocacy space. In the advocacy space, it's definitely more so LGBTQ plus people than allies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's definitely a lot more older people. There aren't many young people. Like I think I'm probably the youngest person that's like involved in Bermuda and involved in planning a pride. Yeah, I'm probably the youngest person by a long shot.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that we could use more young people in the space, like yourself and like many others, to use the voice and offer a different perspective.
Definitely. And so, what do you find to be the biggest hurdle or the biggest obstacle when you organize within Bermuda for LGBTQ rights?
The biggest issue is, I would say, two big issues. Number one would be finding funding. I think that is a big issue for LGBT plus issues in Bermuda. A lot of people don't see the need to fund such things or see the space or think that there will be enough people. But I think that's starting to change now that Pride is really kind of a big thing now.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of narrative is changing. But the other big issue would probably be just the general divisiveness within the LGBTQ plus community specifically. So there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of people thinking that they can, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, earn activism. And that's a big thing of activism, period. Even across the world, across all movements, people think that they are the voice and that they can earn this activism and that they're the only ones who can speak on these issues, they're the only ones who should be getting funded for these issues, they're the only ones who should be out in the front talking. They try to earn the activism and they don't encourage young people to get involved, they don't encourage other people to get involved. They kind of just say, this is what my community needs, and they've never even asked the community what they need. So I think that is one of the biggest issues. And getting support. Like just getting LGBTQ plus people to attend Pride events was a challenge. So like if you notice, a lot of the people at the Pride events were allies. I know many LGBT plus people who didn't come to not one event. Why? Why aren't they there to support the community? So I think that's one big challenge as well.
Yeah, and is this just like out people, like already openly?
Yeah.
LGBTQ? That's interesting because I know my friend group, we're like all out there, all supporting at multiple events, where we could, but that is definitely an interesting point. But I think like from what I've heard, like I have friends and like they're open, but also their family is supportive, and it's very much a thing of like, what if somebody sees you?
Yeah, exactly.
What if people start talking and they know that you're queer, you're this or that?
Yeah, I think that's the issue probably for a lot of people is that even though they are out and gay and live their lives the way they want, it's kind of like this, it's like a Bermudian, it's like the unspoken rule of how to be gay in Bermuda. Like you have to, you can be gay, it's fine for you to say that you're gay, but I don't want to see nothing related to your expression or anything like that in public. Like it's just, you can keep that over there. I think a lot of gay people have kind of adopted that mentality because of how they were raised and growing up in Bermuda. So I think some people are still struggling with getting over that, I think.
Do you mind if I ask some questions and be a part of the conversation?
Yeah, of course.
Go for it.
Yes.
Because I'm just wondering, is it generational as well? Like, I'm just wondering, is it like older people who have more difficulty of expressing, of being out there and all of that? And is it like with younger people that it's a little bit easier because the pressure is not quite so high? And it's really just a curiosity. I don't know if it's a question.
I think it's a bit of both.
I think it's, go ahead, maybe.
I think a lot of it is tied to, I think, their family's personal views, and I don't want to pin it on religion, but I do think there's definitely, like, from what I've seen, my personal experience, a lot of, like, religious influence. So if they're, like, in a, grew up in a family where it was very, like, homophobic, and they're very, like, hardcore Christian, like, you can't be gay, regardless of generation or age, they still face that, like, you can't be openly gay, you can't express that in public.
I think it's a bit of, but in all generations, I think there's different factors. Like, for example, with the older generations, it would probably have been religion and other things that would have had a stronger influence. But today, what I hear a lot from people is that my analysis is that they don't have anything to fight for because they think that it's all okay. So some older generations, the people who are out there, they are people who will always fight because that's who they are. So they will always show up, they will always speak up, and they have to because they grew up in a time where that was so taboo and they chose that route. So they'll always be like that. But I know a lot of young people feel like, one, all the work has been done, which is not true. And two, that it's for the other people. So it's not for them. They don't need to do that. They're already, I get it, because I used to kind of think to say that living life every day is already activism enough for me as an openly gay person. So why should I put myself out there for more, potentially more danger and more negative energy to publicly speak on a platform about the issues in our community and go to Pride and be on camera and all of those things. So that opens up a whole nother book with, I think, my generation specifically. And that's probably why.
That leads into my next question, which is actually, where do you see LGBTQ activism going in Bermuda? Of course, we have the issue of marriage equality, but let's say we achieve that, then what? Or what else do we need to focus on?
So I think we're in a transitional period right now. Well, a lot of this is going to be based around Bermuda because obviously they're the only LGBT plus charity in Bermuda.
Yeah, because they absorb Pride as well, right?
Yes, they now are mainly the face of LGBT plus activism in Bermuda, I would say, as an organization anyway. So they are probably going through a transitional period. Well, they are going through a transitional period.
The new executive director.
Yes, with their new team, their new board, because they're trying to reassess what the community needs post the Privy Council decision around same-sex marriage and domestic partnership. And I guess they've realized that they might not have been doing enough in the community, and they might have been solely focused on one issue and not serving the broader LGBTQ plus community. So I think now they're looking for people to get involved. They're looking for new ideas, especially with the new executive director, trying to see what the LGBT plus community needs and where we can go forward. So I have a lot of hope for the future in Bermuda. I think that if Bermuda continues down the direction they're going down, and if the village continues to exist, and if people like myself continue to exist and speak our truth, then I think we can see some social changes happening, and with social changes, some legislative changes.
That's great. And so you recently put out an article, you wrote a column, and that was about Pride and the turnout of certain political groups. So for political groups, what do you want to see from them as an activist? Like, what do you think, what do you sort of expect from them?
Right. So my biggest thing is show up. And the government especially, regardless of whether people personally agree, personally disagree, personally, whatever they feel personally, has nothing to do with that. The government has a duty and political parties, I think, largely have a duty to
Yeah.
represent all of their constituents,
For sure.
especially regardless of anything.
Mhm.
So they need to show up always, regardless of what it is. They showed up to everything else, so why don't they show up to Pride? That's
Exactly.
my biggest question. They showed up to the Labor Day March, they showed up to 24th of May, they showed up to the Black Lives Matter March,
Mhm.
but LGBTQ plus Pride, which is just as much of a social justice movement as the others,
Yeah.
they didn't present themselves.
Mhm.
So that was very disheartening, I think. And I think they need to understand that it's their duty, and we as Bolivians need to put pressure on the government and the political parties to ensure they're doing their part to support every Bolivian, regardless of any identity. Yeah, for sure. And it's unfortunate. One of the biggest things I find unfortunate is that the U.S. consulate, who doesn't represent Bolivians in any way,
Yeah.
made herself available to come to almost every event
Yeah.
and was present, and our own government wasn't there. So that
Exactly.
speaks volumes, I
Mhm.
think. I'd say it.
Because, our current government, they're very much like, oh, we support everybody. It doesn't matter what your sexuality is. We support and respect everyone. But then, like you said, when it comes to our social justice events or like our celebrations, it's radio silence. You know what I mean?
You have to show up. That's the biggest thing. I even said that in the forum
Yeah.
that was part of Pride.
Mhm.
The first thing that anyone can do to support anyone, but especially LGBTQ plus people, is to show up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's as simple as showing up. They don't have to say anything. If they were just there at the parade, just like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
They had a recent article discussing same-sex marriage, and they necessarily didn't say that they were for it. They didn't outright say that they support same-sex marriage,
Mhm.
but what they did say was that they will show up because they recognize that there are comedians of all different colors and shades, so they have to show up and support everyone, regardless of if people personally agree or disagree or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the government can take a page out of that book, perhaps.
Definitely.
Now say that loud.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so you mentioned that out Bermuda, there's just a lot of other advocacy groups in Bermuda in general is very much like focused on the older crowd. So what would you say is like, something that younger Bermudians or out Bermuda in general can do to sort of, get more involved with the youth? I know we have our group here, but.
I think it's a two-pronged thing. I think two
Yes.
things have to happen. I think young people have a responsibility to be involved.
Definitely.
And to get involved and to seek ways that they can be more involved. And I think a lot of young people don't necessarily do that. So that's the first. And then the second is older adults need to make sure that when young people are involved, that their views and opinions are respected
Yeah.
and valued, and that young people are welcome into the space.
Mhm.
So those are the two issues that I would say probably stop young people from being involved. Is that one, they probably have the expectation that they're not going to be valued the same,
Mhm.
because that's been my experience in certain groups. Being a young person,
Yeah.
they don't see my opinion or my voice. I haven't lived enough, I haven't experienced enough to have an opinion, but
Yeah.
we do, because we're the future. So
Mhm.
we have a responsibility and also a right to have a say in where our country goes and what our government decides to do, as we're going to be the ones left with it
Yeah.
at the end of the day. So, yeah, two things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what do you think like the LGBTQ youth need the most in Bermuda? Like, do you think it's more of like the actual legislation or more of a support group or both? Which one do you think we should focus on the most as advocacy groups?
I think the biggest thing that we need to focus on, particularly that I would like to see anyway, is to get support for LGBTQ+ students in public schools.
Yeah.
And in private schools as well, but mainly in public schools, because that's where the government has responsibility. So the government needs to ensure that counselors are trained specifically to deal with LGBTQ+ youth and the issues that they may come up with. Social services, the police, all of these organizations and branches of the government need to understand terminology, language, how to approach an LGBTQ+ person, what they should say, what they shouldn't say, what might not be taken well, and how to read the room. I think a lot of training around those issues would definitely benefit young people, especially when they're going through a tough time and they go to high school and then they get
Yeah.
told, are you sure you're gay? Or
Mhm.
did somebody touch you or something like that?
Yeah.
And that doesn't help anyone.
No.
And that's the response you get when you go to a counselor. You're supposed to be able to help you.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first step. And then the second step is to ensure that all schools have comprehensive sex education.
Yes.
So that young people can both learn about consent and sex and positive relationships and what relationships should and shouldn't look like and how to date on social media, but also so they can learn about different identities, different gender identities, different sexual orientations. All of that is part of comprehensive sex
Yeah.
education. And Bermuda desperately lacks that,
Yeah.
and we desperately need it.
For sure. Like, we both went to public school.
Yeah.
We've had, I'm not sure, which school did you go to?
Right.
Me too. So I think we have a very similar experience.
Yep.
And we would have like homophobic pastors come and preach to us and do like
Yep.
sermons for assemblies. And like my friend group very much is LGBTQ plus. So we were just like sitting there sort of like, why is she here? Like, why is this person who like goes online or, to her own church and spews so much vitriolic homophobic hate?
Yeah.
Why is she allowed to preach to us when there are openly gay students here? Like, what message is that sending as a school?
Yeah.
And especially as a public school, there's not much separation of church or state. And I know it's a completely different conversation, but everyone's entitled to their own personal beliefs, but there becomes a point where we have to also be open to everyone else.
Definitely. I think at the end of the day, the government has a responsibility, and education system, the public education system especially, is for everyone, and it
Yes.
has to be for everyone.
Absolutely.
And if a certain group of students do not feel welcome there, then that has to be looked at. But up until now, as far as I know, it hasn't been looked at and it hasn't been considered. So the government has a duty there that they're failing at, if I don't say so myself. And now is the perfect opportunity to reassess,
Yeah.
because they're doing a whole education reform.
Yeah.
Now is the opportunity to make sure that those things happen. But I haven't heard anything about sex education as part
I
of the
think they're
reform.
scared to even, approach that subject.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
A great thing about being here at Bermuda College is that we at least get to have conversations.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so I am really looking forward to having further conversations about not necessarily of teaching sex education, but just of providing information potentially.
Yeah.
That we can use our platforms. We have our wonderful books here. I'm not sure if people online have, seen that we have such resources here. We're here in the library, and people have the opportunity to have access. And so just imagine if we created something like just to use our platform.
Yeah.
So that's actually very exciting. So thank you for putting that out there.
Yeah, and the college was a lifesaver for me.
For sure.
I have to say, come and do the Roman. When I came to Bermuda College, that changed everything for me, because being at Berkeley was not a positive experience at all.
No, and like I constantly have this conversation with my friends where we'll see people we went to school with who are now out and proud, and just like the glow up, like mentally, physically, seeing how more confident they are, how much happier they are, where they don't have to constantly suppress their identity.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it shouldn't be like that.
And this isn't to like blame the teachers, of course, but there is definitely something very fundamental within the curriculum and the whole school system that doesn't support LGBTQ students.
And you know what? And I would love to say yet. Because
Yes,
I will always
absolutely.
be the optimist.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions was, what is something that can be done now or that the youth need?
Yeah.
And so we need to
I think
write
what we're
this
doing.
down.
Yeah.
I'll be able to offer that.
Yeah.
But I'm also, because I see your wonderful shirt, loud and
Proud.
okay.
Absolutely.
And I had a question just about authenticity. I am a new convert to Disney Plus, because anything that you need to say about Disney, but I'm just saying. But they had this show called Growing Up. I don't know if you've heard of that. And different people's stories, and the common link was about being authentic and being able to show up as who you are.
Exactly.
So my question is for those who are questioning of their of how they identify. Do you have any words of wisdom that you would share? And not even just a young person,
Just
an
anyone.
older person as well. There are people who are just not sure, who are not comfortable with, being themselves. Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
It sounds cliche, but I think the first step to being able to get over that bridge is to talk about it with someone and talk about your experience and perhaps why, and then they can kind of, if the person is the right person, it's got to be the right person.
Yeah.
They can kind of act as a mirror, I think, to perhaps show you what you're doing and not doing and what might not be true to who you are. I think the first thing is to start to talk about it and start to feel more comfortable talking about it. So even if you are questioning or whatever it is, just talk about that. I know that seems very hard to do, but trust me, it gets easier once you start talking about it. I think that's the first step to being authentic, is being able to speak your truth. So if you start there, I think all these other ducks fall in line after.
Exactly.
I think.
For sure.
Yeah, that worked for me anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we're asking you.
And for KP, I was just wondering, as an educator, what do you think is like the most important thing that you find, for supporting LGBTQ students throughout like your career? Like, what do you say is like the most important steps to take, or what you can do as like a counselor, just anyone in education, to support those people who are kind of struggling with their identity or just need support?
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot on that one. We didn't talk about that. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. And you know what? The answer for me is very easy. Is to try and provide a safe space.
Yeah.
It really is simple, because I don't need to be an expert.
Yeah.
I don't need to try and tell people what to do.
Yeah.
I think that one of the gifts that I have is to allow people to be themselves and to create their space, create their reality. So, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a teacher, because there are lots of people who actually are allies, even within the education system. Like, I have to say, and it's actually, especially at Berkeley, to be honest, there are some people, and maybe they were not there, or sometimes it's difficult for people to stand up. And interesting, when our next guest, who's going to be coming next month, she will be talking about how do you create that space within your own space, within your own sphere, right? And so, I think to allow persons to be who they are, to allow persons to ask questions, to question, to wonder. I'm all about peace and love and all that sort of stuff. I know life is not always like that, but to have people understand that they are always enough, always, no matter what. We have everything within us in order to live a great life, and to know that it is going to be okay. So, and to connect people to the resources that they need, and maybe again that's something else that we can do as the BC Village to actually, I think Upper Rita did that. There are safe places on this island, and just to continue conversations.
Absolutely.
Being open, I think that really helps, because people sense whether you're open to it or not, and they will, as I'm sure KP can attest, they will find you. If they're looking for you, they will find you. So even if you're one person at Berkeley or whatever school, if you're one person who's willing to have these conversations and willing to support LGBT plus youth, they'll find you. So stick it there.
I'm gonna do a plug. This right here, for all you people out there, we have about 20 more. So if you want one in your office, like honestly, we'll make some more. Actually, truly, it was Taj and I. There was a couple other members, but Taj and I at one point, first thing in the morning, we were cutting these things.
Oh my God.
But this is actually a way. This is a way to let people know where you stand.
Like that stood out to me a lot when I first started college, and I would go to my professor's classrooms and see that on their door, on their desk. It meant a lot to me to know that there are people who are openly supportive.
Yes.
And we're going out of their way to show that.
Yes.
And that's a big thing in general in Bermuda, and I read about this in one of my articles for Pride Month. I wrote about it's not just enough to be an ally, but you also have to make sure that people know you're an ally. And that's what I said about the corporate world in Bermuda, is they do a lot of work in the DEI space and in the corporate bubble though. So people don't know that these companies are inclusive or anything because they don't publicize it. They don't make statements in support of Pride. They don't do any of these things in the public. So my suggestion to corporations and companies is to make sure that people know you're an ally and that you're there to support, so that when LGBTQ plus people are looking to spend their pink dollar, as it's called,
Yeah.
they know where they can turn to
For sure.
and what companies are inclusive and welcoming to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see it, like a lot of companies, they'll just put up a pride flag
Yeah.
for the month of August, take it down immediately, like
Yeah.
September 1st.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's nice, but like, where's the support the rest of the year? I think that's also an issue in general
Yeah,
Bermuda, is other than, the Pride March and, in August, other than small groups that will hold like, throughout the year events like us, there's kind of nothing. There's no resources, no support.
Yeah. That's definitely something that needs to happen. Is LGBTQ plus people exist all year round, not just in
Exactly.
June and not just at Pride.
Yeah.
So there has to be some celebration and some advocacy and some work done all year round.
Mhm.
And it starts with small things like the village
Exactly.
and people talking about it, like your next guest who's going to be coming, talking about it every day. And a few other communities who talk about it all the time, every day in their space that they're in. And it just needs to be that. And as more and more people do that, it will grow and grow and grow, I think.
I think what's also hard is like there's no real space or spot. Like the community, we found places that are open to us and friendly to us, and we can go and sort of socialize, but otherwise there's no like specific spot or like, place that's made within that purpose of supporting LGBTQ people as far as I'm aware.
What I would like to see Upview to do is to create many things, but
Yeah.
one thing is create a community center for LGBTQ plus
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
And it can just be a room in their office, but they don't have an office. But if they had an office, a room in their office,
Mhm.
first thing. Second thing is they need to create a hotline for LGBTQ plus youth
Yeah.
going through issues, or at least support a hotline at MWI or with the government.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two things I think are two things that they can do that will be vital to ensuring that people in Bermuda feel safe and welcome and have a space to go to and have a person to talk to if they're having issues.
Definitely.
Okay. So this may be a good time to see if we have any questions.
Yes.
We have some questions,
Okay.
and we have some commentary that you guys might want to speak to
Sure.
more. So we had a commenter who wanted to know, like, why exactly LGBTQIA plus issues should be spoken about in schools, and thinks that maybe it's inappropriate for teachers to talk about their sexual preferences, whatever they happen to be, and is wondering about like what kinds of questions are appropriate for students to speak about with other students. So those kind of fit together, so I thought I would tell you about them sort of all at once so that you could speak to them. And then there was a comment about like whether government should be compelled to show up to events. And I know you guys were addressing that already, but that was a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
who?
I can go first.
yeah, I also have a lot of thoughts, but I'll let you get that
Can you
first.
go first?
Well, I'm just thinking, considering you did write an article, but it kind of speaks to that LGBTQ plus issues are for some reason seen as just sex stuff.
Sexualized.
And it's
So
really not.
it
There's
is.
so much that's like only
Yeah.
the smallest part
Yes.
of like, the
Yes.
identity.
And this is why we
Experience.
have to do what we're
Exactly.
doing right now. We absolutely have to.
Because it's just like, oh, you like your sexual preferences,
Right.
but it's not that. It's a whole
and about
community.
the act and all of that. We are talking about human beings right
Exactly.
now. We're talking about people who are persons, who have feelings, who have questions.
It's deeper than just
and it's
sex.
education. Just my opinion.
Yeah.
And I don't think teachers necessarily have to disclose their sexual
Yeah, it's
identity.
not
I don't think
expected.
that's what we're
No.
getting
Not at
at.
all.
It's the same way how, this is how I'm gonna put it, and people might not like this, but this is how I'm gonna put it. The same way we teach about race and slavery, it's the same way we can teach, and the same way we teach about different religions that we're not a part of,
Mhm.
races that we're not a part of,
Yeah.
history that we're not a part of, that happened on the other side of the world.
Mhm.
It's the same way we can talk about LGBTQ plus issues. You don't have to be gay to talk about gay issues. And LGBTQ plus history is history, so it's for everybody. just like Black history is history, so it's for everybody to know.
Exactly.
So that's how I'm gonna put it. So I think it's definitely appropriate to learn in school, the
Yeah.
same way it's appropriate to learn about Black history, civil rights, Jim Crow, and slavery. I think it's the same, just as important as learning about those things.
Exactly. You don't have to be gay to talk about Harvey Milk and the impact he had, you know, or Dr. Stubbs in a more Bermudian context. They all played an important role in history, like you're saying. And, you know, it's not just a discussion for queer people. Anybody, straight, gay, whatever, trans, cis, can have, you know, can discuss LGBTQ history and discuss sexual orientation and the LGBTQ community. Because again, it's not just sexuality. I mean, it is, but it's not just like your preferences in the bedroom. It's a whole community with a whole history behind it. And people deserve to have that respect and, you know, to be knowledgeable about it so they understand the history and the context behind it, you know, while we have pride and whatnot.
And I just want to say, actually, thank you to that person who made the comment, because this is what this is for. This is the reason why it is a safe space. It is okay to ask those questions.
For sure.
And we are going to be, you know,
kind of,
yeah.
No hard feelings.
Right. Because actually, that's why we have our.
Yeah, it's very important to like have questions like that and sort of have these discussions.
Yes.
So,
and so now we know we should probably have a whole discussion just about that.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
But is there anything else?
And if I can add, high school is meant to train young people for the real world.
Oh yeah.
So
exactly.
If we really want to have a conversation about what the real world is like, then people need to understand that different people exist in the world. And we cannot pretend that we're going to only learn about one thing because that's the only type of people that exist. We have to learn about everyone, all different cultures, all different types of people from all different parts of the world, because we will encounter that in our real world. And what we don't want to be doing as a country is training young people to go out in the world who are going to be biased, inexperienced, and unknowledgeable. We don't want to have that reputation as a country, training people to go out into the world and carry that with them.
I feel like I need a clap for that. Like, that's awesome. So I'm looking at the time. We're at 2:16. So maybe two more questions.
I was going to say.
Yes, cafe time. We may need to have a little snack.
We have two more comments, actually. So we have one speaking that thankfully the two words and a comma have been included in the BC Handbook for Conduct for some time now, and that gives a framework both for staff, faculty, and students alike to demonstrate support for equitable treatment in an educational setting. And we have another question after that asking, is it possible for teachers to be an ally without speaking about sex itself?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, because like we were saying earlier, it's more to the LGBTQ community and the history than just sex. Yeah, that's like only one facet of, you know, sexual orientation. You know, there's romance behind it, there's actual relationships, and again, activism and everything that goes along with it. So you don't have to talk about sex inherently. You can have a history lesson all about like I mentioned before, Harvey Milk or Dr. Stubbs, and you know, their impact without mentioning sex once. You can discuss like relationships, adult relationships, without going into the detail, you know, the nitty gritty of sex and whatnot. So
it's as simple. For example, there was a big discussion recently about Peppa Pig, who they introduced a same-sex couple for the first time in the 17-year history run.
It is. Two lesbian like pigs.
And people were saying, how do they talk to the kids about it? Just like that. It's just about it being there, and there's two mommies and one. That's it. There's nothing else to discuss.
Period.
Some children have two mommies, some children have two daddies, some children have one mama, one daddy, a daddy and a mama. That's just how it is. There's nothing to explain beyond that.
Yeah.
And you've got like kind of a reply comment saying that that kind of discussion would be helpful because sex itself can be triggering for some. And we also have a question about how can the media be better allies?
I think that's a great question.
That is a great question.
I think
Extreme.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm loving these questions, by the way. I definitely think just publicizing the events and the different happenings within the LGBTQ community. So like our cafes, our panels, our meetings, if they did more to promote those and share like their pages and write articles on it and just be there for those events and publicize it, that would, that means so much. And also, I would say not to give platforms to people who are brutally hateful.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to name names, but we know who, TNN, Trevor Lindsay, and his like little article.
You said no names.
I did, but then I said
Take
names.
that back.
I will take that back. You didn't hear a name. A certain news network, and they gave a platform to a very homophobic member of the community.
On the day of Pride.
On the day of Pride. On the day of Pride. And it was all just homophobia. That was the entire article. And it was very, very transparent and very harmful to, it was very counterproductive to that day and what, the community was trying to do. So just don't do that, please.
I think that's, I can't remember who says it, Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. If you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. So media outlets have a social responsibility just like everyone else. So they have a responsibility to ensure that the content they're producing is not harmful to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing to tell the news, and there's one thing to give platforms to derogatory and negative aspects of society. For example, the Royal Gazette would not highlight someone who is openly racist and give them the opportunity to write an entire column about something racist. But they would do that. They would give a platform to someone to talk homophobic stuff. I don't understand the difference. Maybe I'm missing something, but the same
mention their money.
The same social responsibility that we have, for other issues have to carry through this issue.
Yeah.
So we need to ensure that the media we're putting out is positive and constructive, not always negative. So if something does negative come up, then you call someone to give an opinion on it, something positive to counter it. You don't present one side of the argument. That's just so bad.
I think we're in a space now with media that it always has to be two sides, especially even when the other side is clearly in bad faith and just spreading fervent hatred. Mm-hmm. And maybe we don't need to put that out there or give them a platform because it just strengthens their viewpoint and gives them more attention and more supporters over time. So,
but they are still there. So the question is how to safely deal with it.
That's the thing. That's a whole other discussion.
That's
a very, very complex topic.
Mm-hmm. And part of our reality.
Exactly. So we can't ignore it.
Yeah.
Completely. But I think there is a responsible way to present those issues, to present that opinion while mitigating the risk of giving them a further platform.
I just think there's a time and a place.
Exactly.
And I don't think
on the day of Pride.
I just don't think negative, derogatory statements should be made in the media, period, because young people are reading that.
Exactly.
Impressionable people are reading that, and you don't know what your words could do for someone who is already in a negative situation. Mm-hmm. So I just think that conversation can be had personally with someone, perhaps, but not on a public platform where anyone has access to that.
Yeah.
Protect the kids.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And with that,
yes,
we are at lucky 2:22.
Okay.
We're here until 2:30. So, Taj, just wondering, do you have any final words for us? Because I do want to talk a little bit about what the village is doing in the last few minutes. But any final words, final thoughts, words of wisdom, catchphrase, something that people can take with them?
Sure. The main thing that I always tell people is you're looking for something to do. And I said this in the forum, I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. The main thing you can do is show up, firstly. Mm-hmm. The second thing you can do, if you can, in every space, or in any space, is to speak up. And then the third thing you can do, which I didn't say before, but I'm going to say now, is put your money where your mouth and body is. If you're showing up and speaking up, if you have the finances to support, put your money where your mouth is. So those are the three things I think that people can take away to do if they're looking for something to do for the community. Show up, speak up, pay up.
Exactly.
Just a catchphrase.
My heart is so full. Bermuda College students, I want people to know this is what Bermuda College is doing. This is the education that we are giving. It's not just about the academics, which are absolutely wonderful, but we're talking about life things. We're talking about people who are affecting and doing things in the community for the betterment of this world. So thank you so, so much for coming back to us. You will be back again, whether you like it or not. That's what Zoom is for. And you will be back. And to you, Sophia, thank you so much
Thank you.
and for being here.
Yeah.
I just want to make mention, we have some events that are coming, and we're actually on Instagram, so please add us on to Instagram. I believe it is the BC Village, and we're also on Facebook. Like us on Facebook. Email address is bcvillage@college.pm, or contact me directly at kperry@college.pm. We have quite a few events coming up this fall. Just a quick mention. We have another Q&A Village Cafe. Maybe we'll have some goodies. Maybe there's someone out there who wants to make us cookies, and then we can sample those cookies and we'll mention your name. I don't know if I can legally do that, but I mean, do like to eat. And it's a gift.
It's a
yes,
gift.
if you would
It's a
like
gift.
to give us a gift, because after we're done, we're going to eat all this stuff. Just
Absolutely.
So another Q&A Village Cafe on October 13th. Now we are going to be working with the Wesley Methodist Church. And for any educators who are out there, if you work with young people, if you have any middle school, high schoolers who you believe would be would benefit from being a part of the BC Village, we have a youth edition of our Q&A Cafe, and that's going to be on October 31st. On November 10th, now don't be alarmed, we're going to have the Q&A Village Cafe After Dark edition. So, but what that means is that those who are 18 plus, and it's going to be with Subspace. Subspace is someone, or is a group who has donated funds to us, who've raised money because they believe in the importance of the LGBTQ plus issues. So thank you to Subspace. And on November 27th, I really put this into your calendars. You have to be there. I think we're going to be overrun with people. We're going to have to turn people away at the door. The open mic poetry night that's going to be with Out Bermuda. November 27th. We'll be giving more details about that. But it's going to be fabulous. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So go into our website, but I went to Instagram, Facebook, so you can find out about this information. And I would also like to say thank you so much to the BC Village executive team. I'm not sure if she's gonna put her hand out, but we have someone in the background. We have Nicole DuPont, who's helping us. Sophia, who's our president. Dr. Tracy Harney, Sahara, and we would not be here if it were not for them. Thank you so, so much to Dr. Green, who has truly been a supporter for our groups for the past few years. BC Village has been here since 2017, and there were ways.
It's like our 5th anniversary.
Almost, yeah, something like that. Yeah,
look at us.
Truly. Special shout out to Miss Nikita Scott. She's going to be like, oh no, but truly, truly of support. The Counseling and Career Center, again, would not be able to do what we do without their support. Miss Cherie Richardson, Shelly Riley, who helped to set up this beautiful, awesome room. Thank you so much. And to all of you who have come and joined us today, thank you for showing up, because you did not have to, and for sharing this, because it is being recorded, for sharing this with others who need to be a part of this conversation. So with that, I believe we are on time.
Yeah.
We've got 2 minutes. Anything? Are we done?
Can I just apologize to everybody, because this is my first time with the tech skills, so I know I was bopping comments here and there, and so comments may have appeared for shorter or longer periods of time. That's entirely on my tech skills. But thank you.
First time.
Yeah.
Thank you to everybody for bearing with me.
Of course.
Okay. Well, with that, next time We will have coffee in our
Absolutely.
cups.
Yes.
Dr. Green would like us to know that this was very informative, and she will donate cookies for us. Thank you, Dr. Green.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Chocolate chip. I hope.
Just ignore me. I ain't chocolate chip.
Stop making requests. Have you heard that, Dr. Green?
Yes. Yes.